This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk, a call-in show on the Skeptic Haven channel. Let's Talk is a safe space for atheists and those who are questioning or leaving religion, and anyone that wants to ask questions and have a respectful dialogue. From the US, call us at 984-789-4787, and from outside the US, call in from your computer using the URL that's on the screen. And hello, Alma.
Hey.
There's that URL. Sorry about that. Alma, this is the first time I'm actually meeting you. So before we get to the caller, let's do some personal introductions. I'm Brycearonee. Some of the people here know me, some don't, and you are Alma.
Yeah, I have been a couple times in here before, but I don't think that I'm also very well known by the community either. Um, I was a Jehovah's Witness and I got out. And I am now an atheist. And I started to help out on the Spanish channel, Nuestra Experiencia Atea, and I
Mhm.
am there with other Spanish-speaking members where we're trying to spread critical thinking to Latin America because it seems that all other things are spreading faster than we are.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. Well, I appreciate what you're doing. Congratulations on escaping from the thing that you were indoctrinated into and embracing critical thinking. I should also say for some of the people who are watching, I was originally supposed to be doing this with Cynthia McDonald. She unfortunately had a situation where she was not able to make it. So that's unfortunate. I really hope to be working with her again in the future. But I was fortunate enough that Alma stepped up and decided to co host with me. So thank you for doing that, Alma.
Thank
Have,
you so much for inviting me.
yeah, have you done these call in shows before?
No, actually, no, and I am a little bit nervous, so I hope I do it well.
You know what? Don't be nervous at all because there's enough nervousness coming from me. Because guess what? I've
Okay.
never done it before either. So
Ooh.
if anyone should be nervous, it should be me. But no, we're all amongst friends here. It's going to be fine. And we actually already have a caller in the queue right now. So
Nice.
let
Let's
me
see
go
who
up
it.
and pull up the caller. It looks like it's Carrie from California. And Carrie, you are
Yes, I'm
on
here.
Let's Talk. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Let's Talk.
Hello. Yeah, I
So
can hear
today's
you.
great. So today's discussion is about wokeness or wokeism or being woke. So why don't you tell me what you think? How would you define woke, and what are your feelings about it?
Okay. It appears to be a leftist ideology, and I would agree with probably 80 to 90% of it. But there are some things that I've heard that woke is about that I would not agree with. So I want to. Now I've heard what the right has to say about woke. I want to see what woke has to say about woke.
Okay. So what is woke? What does it mean? What does it mean to be woke?
You're asking me?
I
Yes,
am.
we would like to know what is your
Oh,
definition or what do
okay.
you understand for
Okay.
that? Yeah.
It means awake and not asleep.
Um,
Perfect.
okay.
That's good enough. That's a good enough start. When I first started hearing the term, that's immediately what I thought: awake and not being asleep. And so it confused me when I started hearing right wingers kind of use it as a pejorative because it seems like being awake would be preferable to being asleep. Um, outside of that, is there anything more to add? Like, does it mean with respect to specific like political ideology or position on social issues, can we say that a specific type of position is woke versus another position is sleep? Like, what's a position that you would describe as being woke?
Well, anything to do with equal rights for blacks, equal rights for women, equal rights for um, transsexuals, which I'm not too sure about because I don't agree with transsexuals competing with biological women and taking prizes that should have gone to biological women.
Okay, you came in kind of muffled there, but I heard rights for blacks, I think, and rights for, I think you said
Women?
transsexuals and rights for women. Is that what, are those woke positions, rights for different demographics?
Are they right for different demographics? I want to find out what you say they are and determine for myself whether they are right, not for a demographic, but simply objectively right or wrong, morally.
Well, so let me ask you this. Do you believe that all of these different groups should have rights?
Oh yeah, every group should have some rights. I'm not sure if you want more rights than I think you deserve, and I want to find out if you do.
Should they have equal rights?
Say again, please.
Should they have equal rights? Should each demographic have the same rights, or should some have more rights than others?
Equal rights.
Equal rights.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe that people who advocate for equal rights are being woke?
That seems correct. Okay, yeah.
Okay. And so woke would be a good thing then, right? Because you're advocating for equal rights, and equal rights equals wokeness, so you would be woke, correct?
Yeah, so far, but I want to find out if you assert, if you have some things on your agenda that I don't agree with. I want to find that out.
Well,
I mean,
why don't you
have
tell us
all kinds of things that I agree with and some that I don't agree with.
Okay, so can you tell us one of the things that you don't agree with us?
Okay, I mentioned the one about trans women competing with biological women and taking prizes that should have gone to biological women.
Okay, do you have an example of somebody doing that?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Okay, and why do you think that you don't have an example? If it's something like
Because I can't think of one.
Systemic
I can't think of an example because I don't bother to remember such examples, but I've seen them on television where they're in the news.
I think there was an example of a swimmer. I can't remember the swimmer's name recently, a transgender swimmer who won a women's swimming competition. But that was the first like high profile sporting event where I even heard about that happening. And so it has happened before, but it seems exceedingly rare. It doesn't seem like it's really
a norm.
It doesn't seem like it's a significant problem yet, and an issue. It seems like something that people are more fearful of happening in the future, but not something that's actually really happening now. So do you think we might be jumping the gun a little bit, or kind of, on a slippery slope by fearing that when it's not really an issue right now? I mean, it could. That's not to say that it couldn't be, but right now that doesn't really seem to be an issue so much, does it?
Okay, the fact that it's not a big issue does not mean that it's not an issue. And whether it's a big issue or not, I want to know if woke endorses that sort of thing.
Well, woke is not a person, so I don't know that woke can endorse anything. Woke is more of a position. I mean, you defined woke as, an example of woke people being for equal rights. And so if you're for equal rights, then you're woke, at least in that area. But I can only tell you what I think. And, the jury is still out for me. I understand the concern that some people have with allowing transgender athletes to compete, but until we actually see evidence that transgender people who are competing in sports of the opposite gender are have sort of an unfair advantage, like if there's, if that's a recurring theme in sports, then maybe we need to reevaluate that. But for right now, I don't see enough evidence to presume that. I think, like I said, I can only think of one example where that's happened so far. So I don't know that that's enough to go on. I don't know if that would be enough to bar transgender people from competing in the sport of their gender. Do you think that we should do that?
Okay. I totally approve of transgender people competing with other transgender people.
So you think we should make a new league?
Like being totally separated?
League?
Yes, that's correct.
And you don't think that would cause more problems, though? I feel like that might cause more problems in sports.
Yeah, example, and that is sport that we're... I'm sorry for interrupting, but like the example that we just saw, there's only one swimmer. Do you want to create a league for one swimmer?
I want to either have a league for one swimmer or not have the
how that will work? How the competition will be against who?
Yeah, there's not enough. I don't know if there's enough transgender swimmers or transgender people in specifics to have a league yet.
Okay, in that case, if there's not enough to justify a league, then no league and no competition of trans people with non-trans people.
I'm sorry, say that again. You want to have a league for trans people with non-trans people? Is that what you said?
No. If there is not enough trans people, to justify a league where trans people can compete with each other, then I would say that trans people should not be competing against biological people.
So you think that if you have something unique in you, you should be banned for doing something that you like?
You're making a generality of my specific case.
No, you are I'm saying about one single person that is doing that. So I'm just asking if that is the question. Like, if there is one person that has one problem, it should be everything against them, just for, I don't know, we just something in particular about them, they should be singled out and banned just for one thing?
You're going to have to make a clear statement for me to either agree or disagree with it.
Well, you've already said that you think that if someone is a trans woman, that they shouldn't be, they should just be banned from competing with biological women. And since there's no league for trans women, basically you're saying they shouldn't have the right to compete at all. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's a good example of what I'm saying.
Okay, so then that wouldn't be equal rights then, would it? That would be unequal rights.
No, they have an equal right to compete with equal people, just like all the biological people have the right to compete with all the biological people.
Well, rights are given, right? So we rights aren't this just magical thing that people have or don't have. They're given by society and by sports authorities. And you're arguing basically that because someone is transgender, therefore they don't have the right to compete in a sport. I don't think that that's fair.
Yeah.
You are making a generality of the specific that I mentioned.
No, I'm not making the
No.
generality. You're making the generality. You said that trans women shouldn't compete
Okay,
with,
wait a minute. That
right?
is not correct. I said
Okay.
specifically a trans woman competing with competing with biological women in sports. Now
Is that
that is specific I'm talking about. Now you are making it a generality where
I disagree with
if
you. I
everybody doesn't compete with everybody in everything, then there's something wrong.
No, I disagree with you. Let me tell you why I disagree. When you make the statement that a trans woman shouldn't compete with biological women, what are you basing that on? What is your reason for saying that?
Yeah.
Because trans women have male strength and biological women have female strength, which is not as great as male strength.
Does every trans woman have male strength, as you put it?
All of the ones that I'm aware of do.
So that's a generalization you're making then, right?
Yep.
How many trans women do
That
you know?
is a generalization, yeah.
How many trans women do you know?
None.
So how do
Okay,
you
so
know
when you
that
just
they
said,
are stronger than women?
yeah,
Because men are stronger than women. I know that.
So you
I
think
don't
that
need to
any
know a
man
specific
from I'm
trans
sorry.
person to know that.
Okay. So you think that if any man from the street can just go and compete in any sport and win to women? It doesn't matter if they already are trained and have been in the sport for several years. Any man from the street can just go and win.
No. I think there are
So,
rules for
so
being
what
in
will be the
sport.
advantage then?
Advantage of what?
Yeah, what would be the advantage for a transgender to go and compete against women?
Because a
Cis women.
transgender woman is stronger than a biological woman and can therefore win contests that the biological women could not win.
is that true in every case?
Well,
Are all transgender
there
women?
may be some, for all I know, there may be some trans women who are not as strong as some biological women. Okay, yeah, here. There probably are some trans women who are not as strong as some biological women. But in general, now I'm going to a
Okay,
generality,
so
trans women are stronger
correct. That
than
was my point.
biological women.
That was my point, Carrie. Remember a few moments ago when I said that you're the one making the generalization? That's what I'm talking about. And in truth, you can't really
Yeah,
say that because you don't know that
I'll
all.
make a generalization when a generalization is appropriate. But you are taking my specific example and making a generalization out of it.
Why is your generalization appropriate?
Okay. Okay. Now, give me an example of what you consider my generalization to be, and I'll tell you if I think it's appropriate.
Well, from what I understand of your argument, trans women are stronger than biological women. That is a generalization. You
Right.
agree?
I agree. Now, that doesn't mean all trans women are stronger than all biological women. It means
No, I
that
get it.
trans women are generally stronger.
I get it, Carrie. It's a generalization. But do you know that? Is that something that you know as a fact, or is that just something you're presuming?
I'm pretty sure everybody knows that as a fact.
I'm pretty sure they don't. I'm pretty sure the only person who would know that would be the transgender person and their medical provider.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay. You know what's going on here, and I know what's going on here. And all of your listeners know what's going on here. And I'm done talking to you.
Okay, well, I'm glad you called in anyway. We will say goodbye and move on to another caller. But what do you think about that, Alma?
I think it's a little bit of misogyny too to say that, oh, is a man, so automatically he has to win to every woman, doesn't matter what. He has an advantage just because at one point the transgender person was had another gender. So that's
Yeah,
the
there's
automatic win. It's a little bit misogynistic.
yeah, there was a
Like,
lot of things going on there. I think it was incredibly sexist against women. This assumption
yeah,
that all women are weak, and a biological woman, whatever he thinks that is, I think he means a cisgender woman, is just incapable of winning against a transgender woman. But I don't know that there hasn't been enough. There's not enough evidence. Like there's not enough examples of that happening in sports for anyone. I doubt anyone has ever actually done a study on this. So it's like it just seems like
it just is
a
not
sexist
enough.
presumption.
Yeah, and also there is not enough people on that stage doing that. Like it's not like every sport now has like 5 or 6 or 7 transgender players doing this and winning everything. Because even on the leagues that has happened, I think that
Hmm.
also there is an MMA fighter. The
Yes.
MMA fighter did not win.
So there was an MMA fighter who was transgender.
Yeah, and fought with somebody on the same rank and was cisgender, and the cisgender woman won. So
Yeah, it's I don't know. I also think that the topic of conversation is woke and wokeness and wokeism,
yeah,
and it seemed like he really just had an issue with transgender people because that was the only thing. I started by asking him, do you think that people should have equal rights? And he said yes. And then he brought up transgender people and then specifically transgender women and said they
mm-hmm,
shouldn't compete in sports. Well, that's not equal rights. So,
yeah.
um, but go ahead, Alma. I'm sorry.
No, it's not. It's okay. Just think that maybe the issue is not that he's upset about equal rights. Is only upset until the point that is something for him to be upset about. Like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm okay with I don't know, colored people having rights. I'm okay with women having rights, but this is my limit, and you should not go by this limit, or I'll get angry.
Yeah, I think that he's sometimes people are for equal rights until they're not. So
Yeah,
they're for equal rights for these people, but not these people. Well, it's not really equal rights. But
yeah,
but I would agree. The thing that he did say that I would probably agree with is that
hmm,
being for equal rights means that you're woke. So I asked him for a definition of woke. I'm not sure that he gave a definition. He seemed to not really have his own. Um, what do you think woke is, Alma? Like when you hear
well,
woke, what does it mean to
mhm.
you?
To me, when it started in the US to use that term, uh, it just was for people who was like actively engaged like in social and political issues like social justice, the systemic oppression,
Hmm.
being against racism, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia.
Yeah, that's
And
that's what I
mhm,
assumed it to mean when I first
mhm,
heard it, especially when I heard it start to become used as a pejorative for the
yeah,
right wing. I didn't actually know what it meant, but that's what I intuitively thought that it might mean. And so I did look up like the definition of it just to see what people thought it meant. And Wes, can we pull that up? I found a definition online and basically it was there it is it's oh gosh that's small being aware of social and political environments regarding all demographics and social economic standings, awareness of what is going on in the world as it is relates to racism and social injustice. So pretty much what you just said there, and I feel like that's what most people would intuitively understand it to mean. But it
mhm.
became politicized from the right.
Yeah, I think they started to use it like if it was an insult. Oh, you're woke.
Yeah.
So,
which is
like,
bizarre to me.
yeah,
Is that
but I
not?
think
But
that
like, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's
No, no,
just that
no.
I
Go
think I
ahead.
have a little bit of delay here.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, I think they use it as an insult because they say, "Oh, you're dividing us. You are using this topic to divide the country," and yada yada. Like uh, talking about, let's say, racism.
Hmm.
Like, you shouldn't talk about it because it's dividing. It's dividing the
Yeah,
people.
yeah. It's like, if your position is you shouldn't talk about it, that's kind of like saying sweep it under the rug, right? Let's pretend it's not there, and
Hmm.
that's essentially being sleep, is it not?
Yeah.
Like, to me, that would be the pejorative. Like, why is woke the pejorative? Why isn't sleep the pejorative? Like, I want to know things. I want to be aware of things.
Yeah.
I don't
In
get that.
Latin America, they have been using not that term woke because we don't have like that same word for being awake,
Hmm.
but they use progre, like progressive. Being
Yeah,
progressive is the
that's a
kind
bad
of the
word.
alternative. Yeah, yeah. Like, you're a progre, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, no.
Yeah. Hello, Titan Uranus. I love
Hey.
that tag there. Stay woke derives from the 1920s or 30s. African Americans said it to remind each other to keep fighting for civil rights. Yeah, and I think Erica Badu had repopularized that term in the late 90s and early 2000s in one of her songs, and then it just kind of became appropriated or stolen or perverted by the right. But ooh, that was a
Hmm.
Freudian slip by the white. I did not mean that. Um, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of people I know who don't like to be called woke, to use it,
Hmm.
and it's not just all because I don't know why, but yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get some more callers to give us their thoughts. Call in to Let's Talk at 984-789-4787 if you want to discuss your opinion about woke or wokeism. Is it wokeism or wokeness? Which one is more correct to say? I don't know.
No, I'm not sure either. I have here wokeism, and
Yeah,
I
I've
have
heard
heard
both.
both. Yeah.
I've heard both. I've heard wokeism and I've heard wokeness. Being woke is probably something I want to say. I don't know. What do you guys think is the correct way? Let us know. So while we wait for callers, we did have some questions that had been previously written in. Let's see if we can get some of those up. Wes, do you have some of those questions?
Let's see. One question.
And there we go. So, does a non-woke atheist even exist? Denying God's existence or authority is defined as woke by conservatives. I did not even know that, but it's a good question. Are there some atheists who are not woke? Probably,
Hmm.
not probably. I'm almost sure that there
I'm
are.
I'm completely sure. The thing is that people equate being an atheist
Hmm.
and think that, oh, all of them must have the same exact thinking. And being an atheist is, well, to me, it's only not believing in any deity. Like, to me, there is no God. And for a lot of people, being an atheist is something else. Um,
Yeah,
so it's just they try to equate being an atheist with being woke, and that's not the case because I have found atheists that are against women rights. I have
hmm,
found atheists that are fans of Andrew Tate. I have found atheists that are against abortions. So mm, I don't
yeah,
think that that is the position.
yeah. I think it's kind of a stereotype that because to be honest, it does seem that most people who identify as atheists tend to lean left politically, at least on social issues. And so I think it's kind of become a stereotype that if you're an atheist, then you're also like a progressive Democrat, or you're,
Yeah.
pro gay rights, or you're pro women's rights, or you're all these other things that don't really relate to atheism, but there's a correlation there, but it doesn't always line up. So I would say that the answer to that question is no. But anyway, we have another caller on the line, and I'm going to bring him up. This is Puck, him from Ohio. So he wants to talk about picking fights in small venues may not always be appropriate. Puck, can you hear us?
Hi,
Yes, I
Puck.
can. Hello.
Hello. Welcome to Let's Talk.
Oh, Bryce, I've been wanting to talk to you for a very long time since I first saw you on a show, Truth Wanted, a long time ago. It's an honor to finally get to talk to you.
You actually remember? Somebody remembers that I was on that show. That's amazing. Well, I appreciate it. So we're talking about wokeness or wokeism. I'm not sure which one is more appropriate. What do you think? What would you call it?
It seems like one of those terms that's so nebulously applied that, like, you can make it pretty much say what, depending on what statement you want to make, you can say that this does or doesn't fit your definition. I've been thinking a lot about this and about social issues lately, and I saw that you were having conversations about it, so I thought I'd see if I can add anything to add to it.
Well, we appreciate you calling in. Why don't we start by, I asked this of the last caller. It seems only fair to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
How would you define woke? What does that mean?
I actually saw the definition that you just flashed on screen, and I don't have any disagreements with it. It seems like
Okay.
Wokeness is an awareness of social injustices and the need to address them.
Yeah. I almost feel like I said when I started, I feel like that intuitively most people think that that's what it means, even people on the right who are against it. I feel like they also think that it means that too. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. So what is your position on wokeness or wokeism? Do you consider yourself woke?
This is where maybe we would have a little bit of difference. Let me give you a real life situation. There is an escape room company, and escape rooms are starting to become popular as a form of entertainment, but they're not totally ubiquitous yet. And as one of the clues in this escape room, you are supposed to look through a series of books. And if you look really carefully at this series of books, there's zero other representation here, even though there's a lot of opportunities for it. It's all written by white authors. That's, could be better, but also, is this something worth, say, writing into the company about, boycotting the company for? Like, what is the proportional response to noticing missing an opportunity for representation? And I think that that's where the line of wokeism is drawn for most people. Not the definition of what it is, but in what the proportional response is to seeing opportunities.
Okay. I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. With your particular example, I don't know if you gave an answer. I think you really just kind of asked a question. What is the appropriate response to a book publishing company only throwing out material by white authors representing white people? Was that your question?
No, I didn't mean to disregard a question if you gave one. I'm very sorry. Could you state the question again, and I'll make sure I do a better job.
No, I was just piggybacking on something that you said. You gave an example of being in an escape room where the clue had something to do with material being produced by only white authors or only representing white characters in books.
Yeah. So, like, in this particular escape room, this is a real life escape room, but I don't want to give the name of the company, unless it becomes important. But one of the clues is that you must find a list of books. And they could be any books. The books aren't relevant to the puzzle, but all the books are by white male authors. It was an opportunity for representation, but it's also not really severe. There's not a lot of strong repercussions for having a list of white authors. But so what I'm wondering is the line of wokeism by taking this fight disproportionately far?
I think that would depend on
what would
what
be the proper proportional response to this?
Well, in that type of situation where we're talking about an activity where people went to pay to go get some entertainment, I'm not really sure that boycotting the panic room or the escape room company because they only had a clue that dealt with, books that were written by white authors. I'm not sure that boycotting that would be helpful. I'm not sure that, going on social media and people saying, hey, you should boycott this book publishing company, or like, I don't even know how that would go, how you would address that. But it would be something to bring up maybe on social media about how that's endemic to our culture, that's somewhat problematic in our culture, which is American culture. We tend to think is very diverse, but we routinely see in regular examples white overrepresentation and minority underrepresentation. I tend to bring things like that up on my social media, and people respond to it positively. I think that that's a slow but positive change. So would you say that's going too far?
No, and I think that's where it's so hard to define something. Like, here I am, I've been thinking about it a long time, I still can't put it in a succinct sentence where the line of wokeness is not in what you find an issue with, but in how you deal with the issue and what you think the response to the issue should be. So I think that would be great by calling out, saying, hey, game designers, when you are thinking about game elements, elements in your game where you could have an opportunity for representation, it's a good idea to, put a foot in that direction. Here's why representation is important. Here's why it matters. But to actually, I'm not sure that there's anything really to hold this company's feet to the fire for. It's an innocent game, and they probably just weren't thinking about it. They weren't I don't think they were deliberately whitewashing a game. It's just when they thought of a list of 6 books, these were the first 6 they came up with. So a proportional response, I guess, would be to talk to not the company itself, but to people at large and game developers and say, be on the lookout for this and be on the lookout for opportunities.
It's funny that you brought this up because a friend of mine just sent me a message on social media recently asking about this very phenomenon. He wanted to know what my feelings were about books in this country being predominantly overrepresentative of white characters, talking about novels and fiction and all that, and rarely representative of minority characters. There is something called unconscious bias that is, that's all around. We all have it. And sometimes that's influenced by ethnocentrism. And we live in the United States, which is a majority white country. That's been majority white people in positions of power. That's kind of the way that it's been for hundreds of years. And I think that people are just used to white being the default. And unless you're actually a minority yourself, unless you're Black or Asian or Hispanic or gay or transgender, whatever, you tend to assume that white, heterosexual, cisgender male is the default. And so when novels are written with characters, unless it's otherwise stated, you just imagine them as being a white, heterosexual, cisgender, probably Christian person. The only time they ever tell you what the person is or they describe them is when they're a minority. That's been my experience. I don't know about you.
Right. No, I agree with you. I was talking to some author friends lately about an interesting writing prompt. The prompt was, tell me your character is non-binary without telling me your character is non-binary. And a lot of people had a very hard time coming up with how to do that without referencing pronouns specifically, or situations like forms or gender-neutral bathrooms. And so, I agree with you. It's very difficult because there's that default. And in storytelling, you especially like in a place like an escape room where you have a very short amount of time to tell a story, you kind of have to rely on tropes and stereotypes sometimes, not because you want to, but just because there's more to it than the story. So you just want to get to that part. And unfortunately, some things slip through the cracks, like opportunities for representation.
Right. Yeah, I think, but if we just go back to your question to kind of wrap it up, I think that it becomes appropriate to enact stronger measures when we're talking about something that's presented to, like, let's say public school, where you have a bunch of kids of, different races, ethnicities, backgrounds, all going to school and only having access to material featuring, you know, white authors and that has white characters, then you might want to, I could see a parent wanting to say something to maybe the school district or school board about, hey, how about, getting some more minority representation, something a little bit more than, posting about it on social media, because this is something that's affecting the development of their children, so when
Right.
we're talking about like commercial, you paying for a service for entertainment, I don't know if it's that big of a deal. But when it comes to something that this is the only thing that your child has the option of getting, is this, what they're getting from school, and they're only getting white people, and there's no mention of little black girls, I could see
Hmm.
how that would be problematic enough for them to want to take more action if they are woke. Is that fair?
Well, thank you, Gary, guys, very much. That was great. Like I
Yeah.
said, I'm just I'm a little on the starstruck side right now, just getting to talk to you. So I appreciate the time you've taken for me.
Oh, I'm
Thank you
flattered
so
by
much.
that. I'm flattered by that. I'm not a star. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy, but yeah, I appreciate it. And do us a favor and call in again.
Of course. Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Yeah, how about that, Alma? What do you think? Is it? Can you go too far? I mean, I don't think that any of the examples we gave there was going too
Was
far,
like
but
too far. No,
yeah,
I don't think so. Like even like making a small suggestion to the company, like saying, "Hey, guys, it would be great if you add books on the clues for this and this author. Not necessarily just because they're black, just because there is an opportunity for a representation of everybody." The thing that I have noticed,
yeah,
is the following regarding that. Example, you said that you had posted on your social media, correct? Like, not
hmm,
exactly about that issue, but some issues like that. Well, I
yeah,
have find odd that in order to counter those actions, the right wing usually go, oh, they have gone nuclear against this company, they are boycotting, like they're trying to make that small action like something really big, like everybody's
yeah,
complaining,
yeah.
and
I've noticed
it's
that
not the
too.
case.
It seems to me that someone doing something as innocent as even just bringing it up will usually
Yeah,
trigger someone else to say, here we go with these woke liberals again
trying to
complaining
cancel
about,
everything.
yeah, and that's when it seems to become an issue, when really myself as the woke liberal or whatever, I'm not really making a big deal. I'm just mentioning it. But then the other person who's against it just flips out on you, you know?
Yeah,
I
I, I saw it. I saw an example of this regarding like the Mario Bros movie. Like
mhm.
everybody were like singing the song, beaches, beaches, whatever.
I don't
And
know.
I saw a website that were like, oh, they're trying to cancel the movie because it does not have um, people of color in it. Like, no, it's a cartoon. Nobody's saying that. It's just they found somebody commenting like, oh, maybe they will have added somebody, maybe a character or something, and then they just blew it out of proportion, like saying, oh, they're trying to cancel Mario now.
Let me ask you a question. Does it seem like to you most of the people who are against wokeness or wokeism are also against cancel culture, or they also claim to be against cancel culture?
They claim to be against cancel culture, but they are the first ones to do that.
Yeah,
Like,
I because
this
I
is
was just
so
thinking, you
weird.
brought up movies. I was just
Hmm.
thinking about The Little Mermaid, the
Oh,
new
yeah.
live action remake with Halle Bailey as Ariel, who's a
Hmm.
black actor playing
Hmm.
Ariel, the mermaid. And that was getting a lot of backlash. I think mostly from the right, although I don't want to assume that everyone who was giving it backlash was on the right, but it seemed to be mostly coming from the right. How dare they take a beloved Disney character who's a mermaid and make her portrayed by a black actor? Like, I don't understand. But they wanted to boycott that movie.
Yeah, like, and whenever you have seen a mermaid, like, it's not real. It can be green for all I care.
Yeah, what do mermaids look like? What do real mermaids look like?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. There is no real mermaids. Like, it can be whatever.
We do have another caller in the queue, but before we get to that, I would like to remind everyone to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Go ahead and click the bell too to be notified of upcoming shows, and check out after shows on Skeptic Haven. So we'd appreciate it if you would spend your Wednesday nights at the Secular Soapbox with Apostasy and Bath. I'm not going to try to say his like full name because I always screw it up, but you guys know who I'm talking about. Thursday nights, we also have the Sunny Spot with Sunny Shell and Bumblebee. And Saturdays at the Global Atheists and Women Atheists Unload with lots of hosts. It's a revolving door of hosts, but they're all great, I assure you. And Sundays, there's Let's Talk. And sometimes I'll be here, and sometimes you'll get Cynthia, and I think that's also a revolving door, but that keeps it more interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you say we move on to the next caller? We've got a friend of the show, a friend of everyone, I think. It's Secular Rarity. He, him.
Oh, hey.
Hello, Secular Rarity. Can you hear us? What's going on? Now I'm the one who's starstruck. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, me too. I'm a huge fan.
Well, I saw it was two super duper awesome people on hosting today, so I figured I would call in and pick your brains a little bit, y'all.
Thank you so much.
I love having my brain picked.
Yeah.
Well,
I will be gentle, and we will fall well within the terms of service for YouTube. So no demonetization.
I appreciate it. So we have here, does wokeness eat its own? It sounds like you wanted to call in about that.
Yeah, this is definitely something I see in a handful of different places, and I was wondering whether, where y'all kind of shook out on this and whether this was an issue or not in your eyes. I see sometimes more on the left, we are very, very quick to be critical when we find wrongdoing, I think a lot of times. So like one example that comes to mind is the Senator Al Franken. Right?
How did I know you were going to say that? I knew you were going to say that. Great minds.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike. Okay, go ahead, Al Franken.
Like it's a really, really good and easy one, I think, on a lot of different levels.
Yeah.
And one reason I think it's a good one is because obviously I think we can all list off a handful of political figures in the United States who have done much, much worse and have never admitted. They have never come to terms. They have never, none of that. They've just flat out denied, all the way up to even losing a civil case recently. Again, nobody in particular, just talking generally here.
Yeah. We know who you're talking about.
Yeah, we know.
Is that a flaw with the ideology in general? Like the attitude of always trying to push for social justice and progress, equal rights, is that something that is just inherent, or is it something that, could actually be tamped down to maybe provide that unity that we see oftentimes on the right? Fascists are really, really united, apparently, which is, a real bummer that they don't fight more with themselves. But
yeah,
that difference, I think, is something that I've noticed. And yeah, I just wondered if y'all had seen that, and if y'all think it's something that is just a part of this idea, or hey, maybe some people are going too far?
So my answer is probably going to be longer, so I'm going to let Alma start so that I don't talk away the whole rest of the show. So what do you think of it? What is your response, Alma? And then I'll catch it on the flip side.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that we are facing a little bit the paradox of tolerance, and then we have to be tolerant on up to certain point, and that also is working a little bit like secularity says, a little bit against us, because we are like very quick in reacting and saying, oh, these people did something wrong and they have to go away immediately. And I
Yeah.
think that that's also helping the right to win a little bit, because what happens when they do something wrong, they just say, oh yeah, it didn't happen. No, I'll just deny it, I'll sweep it under the rug. Or maybe they're just flat out saying, yeah, I did it, so what are you gonna do about it? There's nothing you can do about it, so I'll just stay here and I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there are many on the left who fancy themselves as the moral gatekeepers or the ethical gatekeepers. And I think that you are right. There is a tendency for us to eat our own, so to speak. Let me just use the example of Al Franken since you brought him up. We have the example of Al Franken, who I believe he was caught in a photograph where he was mocking groping a woman. I don't know if he actually groped her or if he was groping her for the photograph or whatever it was. It was wrong. He shouldn't have groped anybody, and he shouldn't have taken a photo celebrating that he was groping anybody. But then we contrast that with the example of one Donald J. Trump, who was recently found liable for sexually assaulting someone in a court of law. I think that we need to apply our standards fairly, meaning it doesn't matter if they're on the left or the right. If it's inappropriate, it's inappropriate. But we also need to apply the standards rationally and recognize that certain things are worse than other things and not treat them as though they're the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This,
I think so.
the idea, taking a picture of, with someone where you're pretending to grope them is sexist and misogynistic and ugly. That is not equal to sexually assaulting someone, especially being found guilty in a court of law of basically raping.
For sure.
I mean, they didn't find him guilty of rape, but come on, it's not like that's the first woman to accuse him of that, And so I think we need to decide, and by we, I mean those of us on the left, what's okay and what's not okay. Like at what point it becomes not okay. If we just say, if we look at most of the people in Congress, in the Senate, and most of our branches of government, a lot of them are older white men. And a lot of them are older white men who grew up in a certain era where all of that was considered okay. And this doesn't matter if they were, they could be Democrat, Republican, left wing, right wing, whatever. It's kind of all of them, And so it's unfortunate. But my expectation of most of the people who are leading this country is that they've done that kind of thing. And so what we need to decide, I think, is what's okay and what's not okay. Do we what the standard is between acceptable, not acceptable? What are people allowed to apologize for and still keep their jobs versus what is too far? And I don't think we've worked that out yet. I think that we've kind of rushed to this thing to where as soon as you're accused of something, you're guilty and you're out. And I think that the left tends to do that to a fault. And I think that the right tends to ignore it and not even consider it to a fault. Or they'll only address it if it's somebody on the left, but they're very inconsistent about it. So I don't know if that's an answer to your question, secularity. Go ahead.
No, I think that was kind of exactly where I was going, Bryce, is this one of the things that worries me about that is exactly kind of where you ended there, is this. Unfortunately, our group sometimes seems to be shrinking, and not by any other better arguments or anything, but just by our own hand. We're just we're cutting off our nose to spite our face sometimes, and especially with one reason I really love to point to Al Franken as an example is because ultimately that ended up shifting the balance of the Senate, which allowed for certain judges to be put on the Supreme Court and the federal judiciary, and I think that's going to have some pretty deep ramifications. So it
already
worries
has,
me
arguably.
that. Right. Yeah. I mean, right. Exactly. Yeah. 50 years worth of precedent.
Abortion's illegal. In most places.
Yeah. Whatever. No big deal, I guess. But it worries me, and I guess exactly where I'll kind of just end is that that question, just is there an opportunity for people, especially on our side, who have done something wrong, like truly done something wrong? Do they have an opportunity to make amends? Should we give them that opportunity, especially if 99% of the things they're on our side? Like, hey, again, absolutely agree. I think that action, that picture, what Franken was doing, absolutely should be condemned. We shouldn't perpetuate a culture like that, because it results in harm. We know this. This is just proven.
Here's what I think.
Please. I'm just
here's what I think. I think that this is what people need to do. If you're running for any kind of office, or really if you're any sort of public figure, and you know that you have something in your closet, you've got some skeletons back there that don't dug up, or even if you think they could be dug up, you remember doing something shady or iffy or questionable back in the day, it's incumbent on you to bring that up. I really think that you need to be the one to expose that and say, hey, I've done something in my past that I'm ashamed of. I'm not proud of it. This is what I did. I'm a changed person now. I've learned so much more about this, and I want to be a role model going forward. If more people did that, the public is willing to forgive, because that's sincere. That's genuine. That's different from being exposed and being caught, and having someone dig some stuff up on you. Like, why would you wait for someone to do that? That makes it look bad. That makes it look like you don't really have remorse. You're not really ashamed of what you did. You wouldn't be apologizing for it, but for the fact that you got caught. I think that people need to do that. And if they do that, then they are more likely to be forgiven by people on the left. And that was the first thing I was going to say. And then the second thing had to do with, I can't remember. I lost my train of thought, but that's the big issue. I think that when it's the individual who self-identifies, that's how they get over any indiscretions in their past. And not a lot of people do that. What do you think, Alma?
Yeah, I think that if people will show themselves, like, this is what I did, but this is the context of what was happening when I did it. This is how I used to think. This is how I used to react to things. I was arguing with somebody and say something wrong. It's something that happens with all tweets, Sometimes you are arguing or something like that, and you said something that shouldn't have said, but it stays there, Yeah. But I think that if they did that and they own up to that, it will be like 10 times better than what it is right now. And it won't seem more genuine, like you said, instead of just, somebody dug up this thing from 10 years ago.
But
and
I will also say
no context or anything.
Yeah, and I will also say, just to wrap up the political side of the question, secularity, and maybe this will help you feel a little bit better. I do think that there is some value in people on the left kind of being aggressive with vetting people that they're for or people who say that they're representing the left and cleaning house because one of my biggest disappointments with the Democratic Party is that they're weak and they don't really fight very hard, and they put up very weak candidates and shady candidates and people who are really, in most cases, not much better than the average Republican. And I don't like that. I wish we had more progressive people leading the country, more progressive people representing us. And I think that the Democratic Party, look, if you're not going to fight hard and be a representative, a true representative for the left, and you're going to get caught up in these scandals, we don't want you representing us. And I think that the more that we do that, the cleaner our representatives get, because we will have vetted them properly beforehand. We shouldn't just be settling for a candidate who we think can beat Donald Trump. We should be trying to promote candidates who will do good, who will actually do really good things and who are not shady. And I'm being very selective with my not naming specific people, but I hope you know where I'm going with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think so. And yeah, I think you both had some really great points. And I hope that, even though there has been some pretty upsetting things, in the last handful of years, again, like the rise of Nazis again, that was a real bummer that happened again. But but even with all of that, I see some positive signs, and I do hope that we have a strong showing, not only in the U.S. elections that are coming up, but Turkey is having elections today, I think, and that could be huge. There's a really big chance, I think, around the world for humanism and separation of church and state. Because I think some of the far right overplayed their hand a little. That's at least my hope. I always try to end on a positive note, so hopefully that's something, y'all.
I appreciate that. And by the way, I appreciate you calling in. I don't get to talk to you very often. I watch you all the time on Atheist Experience, and you do a great job.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
And I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I was glad to talk to you both. I don't get to see either of y'all as much as I want. So good to see you on here. And
so call in again.
Talk to you both soon.
Call in again, or better yet, we wouldn't mind having you show up on Secular Soapbox sometime. You are a great voice. You are a great voice in the atheist skeptic community, and we appreciate you calling in.
Thanks so much, y'all. Have a good night.
All right, take care.
Bye. Take care.
Just to, I guess, my closing thoughts on that particular thing regarding the politics. I remember Michelle Obama one time saying, she has this famous quote, when they go low, you go high, or something like that.
Oh yeah, I remember that quote. Yep.
That sounds good, and it definitely appeals to the moral gatekeepers on the left, but it's not always applicable. Sometimes when they go low, you need to go.
You have to
equally
fight.
low. You have to fight. You cannot be weak, and that's why I think that has been partially the Democratic Party's downfall in recent years, just being very weak and trying to, no, we don't want to play dirty like the Republicans. Well, you're going to lose.
Yes, they keep losing like that.
Yeah, if you have dirt on them, you need to throw it out there and show just how dirty they are. Don't be dirty yourself, but if someone else is dirty, you got to show it, and you can't be afraid to say they're filthy. Look at these.
You just have mentioned something that it resonates with me. Like here in Latin America, we are supposed to have like 3 to 4 different parties, and each one of them is supposed to have different ideas and everything. But at the end of the day, they are all just the same. And
how many?
Is because
how many parties are there?
Example, here in Mexico, we have like 10. We have like 10 of them, and they're creating more. The worrisome that I have is that some of the new ones that are creating are
Hmm.
being created by churches. Like there is an evangelical church that is trying to create their own party.
Hmm.
So
That's scary.
yeah, that's kind of scary. And the problem that I see from afar from here, from Mexico to the United States, is that uh, you guys seems to have two parties, but sometimes they act as if there was just one.
Well, we have more than two, but we only have two of relevance. They're the only
Yeah,
two
like
parties that are
the more
supported
relevant.
by, yeah, they're the only two parties that are supported by these huge machines. The DNC and the GOP are basically the two parties that have enough money and enough financial backing and visible prominence and name recognition that if you're not in those parties and you're running, you're not going
You
to
might
have the
not
fight.
get
You
any.
have to self finance basically.
Okay.
You know.
Well, the thing that I have seen is that sometimes both sides are being financed by the same people. So
Mhm.
there's not going to be a lot of fighting if my pocket depends on not pissing off the same people that is supporting the guy that I'm going against.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what exactly what you're referring to. The thing that comes into my mind is I know a lot of conservatives who watch CNN, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and they think that it's a liberal news network. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they think that CNN is too liberal, and a lot of people watch Fox News and they see that as the conservative thing, and they have this idea that these two networks are like against each other or they're telling
Yeah.
opposite things,
Mm-hmm.
but really they're both corporate backed. You know,
Yes,
they're both
exactly.
corporate media, and
Mm-hmm.
so both of them, when it comes to like social issues, they'll kind of play up their differences there to try to
Mm-hmm.
pander to the different people. But
People they have.
when it comes to corporate financing type issues, fiscal matters, they're both conservative.
Yes,
there is
exactly.
there is
That's what
no
I.
liberal news media outlet, mass media that is
Mm-hmm.
liberal or certainly not. There's none that are progressive, and
Yeah.
I would say that they're all conservative. And so, they're only going to tell the stories that kind of promote things like the military industrial complex, and they're all pro war, and they all have these military generals and analysts on who are hired
Mm-hmm.
to give their professional expertise, even though they work for Lockheed Martin or they're on the board of Raytheon. It's all corrupt,
Yeah.
and they're all right wing, unfortunately.
Yeah. But what I meant was like I remember that one time one of my friends that I have over there in the US was
Hmm.
telling me, it's just that you know what, we have this guy that is supposed to be Democrat, and we have this other guy that is supposed to be Republican. Both of them are backed by an oil company.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, they're going to pretend to fight, but they're not going to really fight.
Well, and probably the Democrat or the one who's pretending to be on the left is probably going to be on the left on social issues that
Yeah.
don't relate to all of the kickbacks he's going to get from the oil company
Mhm.
by, not by deregulating or whatever they want him to do, he's going to do just like the Republican. They're both going to do
Mhm.
whatever the oil company wants them to do. So he's just not probably not going to talk about that kind of stuff. He's probably going to talk about like the social issues like abortion or
Exactly.
whatever that he thinks that he could get people to vote for. But yeah, you're right. That's kind of the same thing. Um, so yeah, we started talking about liberalism, and I think that that's kind of another example of people assuming that it correlates to wokeness or wokeism. But
Yeah.
I do you think that this is a term that's going to continue to be a pejorative, or do you think it can be reclaimed? Do you think it can be taken back? Because I have to say, I would rather be woke than sleep.
Exactly.
I don't know how you feel about that.
I do think that is even they have been trying to make it like a pejorative. I don't think that
Hmm.
it can stay like that.
Are you offended by that when someone calls you what when someone on the right or someone who's anti-woke, when they accuse you of being woke, do you find that offensive?
Not really,
Yeah, I don't either.
because they say you're really woke. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like I kind of take that as a compliment. I know they don't mean it as a compliment, but like I'm kind of glad that people recognize that, to be honest.
It's true. It's just that I think a lot of people lets themselves be angry by what they hear on the news or what
Hmm.
they're telling them that they should be angry about.
Yeah,
So if the newscasts start to say, "Oh, this woke people is trying to do this and do that," like a pejorative,
hmm,
that's when they also start to using it like that. But I
yeah.
think we can reclaim the word and change it.
I think it can too. And like part of me says we should reclaim it, and then the other part of
Mhm.
me feels like it almost doesn't really need to be reclaimed.
Yeah.
It's such a dumb insult, you know. It's
Yeah.
like saying, it's almost like accusing someone of being smart, you know. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're one of them smart people. Here we go with the smart liberals again. Like, am I supposed to be offended by that?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I don't know.
I remember one time, I don't remember if it was in English or in the Spanish channel, somebody told me like, "Oh, you people and your big education." Like, okay. Like, am I supposed to be illiterate, or what is the insult there?
I think that there are a lot of people on the right who don't really have a problem with being illiterate. And this is not, I don't mean this is an insult. That's not to say that people on the right are illiterate. I don't think that that's true of most people, but there is a movement to ban books on the right
Yeah.
in certain states here, you know. Um, I don't understand this idea of banning books. I mean, am I woke for saying that books shouldn't be banned?
Yeah, and I don't think that is something that is woke. It's just that I don't think that it should be a banning of books. If we started to ban books, I know that there's some parents that have trying to, use those same regulations to ban the Bible, and they don't like
Hmm.
that when they are and this is applied to their sacred book. But I don't think that we should
Yeah.
ban any book.
I don't either. I don't think the Bible should be banned. I don't think the Quran should be banned. I think they should be available to be read for people who are curious about what they have to say, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and if you don't agree with the ideology at the end, then you don't agree with it. But like, why are you trying to, why are you trying to ban, when it comes to like history, or
Hmm.
I think one of the most recent examples I can think of, in Florida, there's a law where teachers are not allowed to say gay now. The don't say
Oh,
gay
yeah,
law.
I
Have you heard
heard
about
that.
that?
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, it's like, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, gay people are in these schools. There are gay kids in these classes. Do they just you're not allowed to acknowledge their
Their
existence?
existence.
It's really sad, and it's I don't know. It's like they're afraid that if people say it, then it's going to make other people want to
Wanted
become
to do it?
gay. I don't understand. I don't understand the logic.
I think that I have heard that reasoning. Like,
It
oh, now
doesn't
that
make
everything is out there, they think that kids are becoming gay just by listening to
yeah
stories of gay people. Like, is that how it works? No, that's not how it works. Like,
yeah
I have heard about gay people. I don't know, since I was like 12. I haven't. I'm not. So it's not how it works, and sometimes it seems to think that is the way it works. Like, just showing and knowing that it's out there is going to make people say, "Oh, so that is cool, so I can do it." It's not how it works.
it's just fear. Yeah, it's just fear. It's homophobia is what it is. you know
Yeah.
um but So let's before we get on toward, because we're coming up on the back side of the show, let me take the opportunity to say that Skeptic Haven is actually looking for volunteers. So anybody who's watching, anybody who would like to help behind the scenes, if you'd like to be part of the Skeptic Haven team, just send us a message via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And also, if you'd like to consider helping out the channel, become a patron. We have Patreon link in the description, and we appreciate all the help that we can get. So yeah, got that out of the way. So what else? Whoa, we have. I think we had a couple of other questions pre-written that we might be able to tackle. So let's see what we have.
Okay. Oh, also, I know there's going to be like a Tuesday 2000K party for the to celebrate the 2000 members. Well, I mean,
Yes.
subscribers.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
I heard about that too. So the 2K sub party, Tuesday, May 16th at 7 Central. I believe that's 8 Eastern, which is my time zone. So definitely, guys, check that out. It's a big milestone for Skeptic Haven, and we appreciate all of the support that that you guys have given us. So thanks for being part of Skeptic Haven. We're growing, we're continuing to grow, and hopefully we will continue to grow in content as well. So check that out, Tuesday, May 16th.
That's great.
All right. So
okay.
yeah.
What was the
So
question
let's
that
see.
we were
We had
going to
I was let's see if Wes can get that up on the screen for me. I actually don't have access to it, but they're working on it. There it is. Okay. So how does an atheist make a decision between right and wrong? So this is kind of a morality question. What do you think about that, Alma?
Okay. Well, regarding morality, I think that most of atheists, or at least that is my case, we're trying to go with whatever is not causing harm to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. I would hope so. I would hope that
Yeah.
that's what most atheists are doing. I can't say that, to be honest. I can't say that that's what most atheists actually are doing. So my go-to answer on this question is always, I always start with, it depends on the atheist, right? Because not all atheists, being an atheist just means, like you said it earlier, not believing that a God exists. But in terms of your moral foundation, the personal values you have, atheists come in all walks of life. And they have different values, so it really depends on them. I can only say where I get my morals from, or where how I derive right from wrong. And for me, I would echo what Alma just said. For me, it's about well-being. I don't think that there's any like intrinsic purpose to life or the universe or existence. I'm not one of those people who believe. I'm kind of a existential nihilist. And I think that sometimes people who are God believers assume that means you must also be a moral nihilist as well. And that is not the case, because I believe that we each create our own purpose. The purpose of life is whatever purpose the living being gives it. And so my purpose is to enjoy life and to have it be happy and meaningful and fulfilling for as long as it lasts, because it's kind of a temporary thing as far as I know. We only get one life that I'm aware of, so we better make it a good life. And goodness, for the most part, is self-evident. It has to do with our natural sense of empathy for our fellow man. Exactly. Human beings are social animals, just like dogs are. So we have a natural sense of fairness and rightness with respect to how to treat our fellow man. If you want to live in a society, if you want to coexist peacefully with others of your kind, to have a more prosperous, beneficial life, then you have to kind of treat them with the same way. It's kind of social contract theory is another way of looking at it.
Exactly.
If you treat everyone, if you're just like an asshole to everyone around you, nobody's going to want to be around you. And if you don't treat people fairly and with respect, then you're going to get disrespected and you're going to be miserable and alone. And you're probably going to die alone, you know?
Exactly.
So it's not that hard for me. You know, when I do good things, it makes me feel good. When I see other people benefiting from my actions, I feel good. That's kind of the only reward that I need. And if I've ever done like bad things, if I've ever caused someone harm, I feel bad about it. And so that's what I use. I use my conscience, you know, and my conscience is guiding me towards well-being, because that's how I have a longer, more prosperous life. So that was a long, convoluted answer, but I hope it made sense.
It makes sense. No, it does make sense. Like example, like we think whatever action we take, it does respect like the dignity of the autonomy or of somebody else. To me, like the action I'm going to take, those promote the well-being and happiness of everybody around me. Will what I do will cause harm or maybe infringe the rights of somebody else? And like you said, we are social beings. Actually, I remember that somewhere I read there was this scientist, I think it was an archaeologist, that said that the first signs of civilization was not like the clay pots and the houses and everything. The first sign of a civilization was femur that got broken and healed. Because he said, in nature, an animal that breaks a leg is going to die. And somebody has a broken leg and healed, it means that there was somebody else taking care of them.
That's interesting. So there was mutual cooperation where one person was doing work to benefit the other. So I would call that civilized. Maybe that is the beginning of civilization. We do have another caller coming in from all the way from Australia, way down under. We've got Damien, he, him. He wants to give his 2 cents. So, Damien, welcome to the show. Can you hear us?
Hi, Damien.
Brycearonee.
Absolutely.
Old buddy, old pal. How are you?
Hello.
Hey, thanks for calling.
Thanks for having me, and hello, Alma.
Hey, thank you. I'm good.
Buenos dias.
Oh, you speak Spanish. Buenos dias.
Which is gracias. Hey, right. I hear you talk. I hear you guys talking about woke, and yeah, I'll give my Australian 2 cents.
All right, you're going to give in your Australian 2 cents, and I always love hearing from you.
Probably worth about 5 American cents at the moment, but I personally feel like I have a foot in both camps. As you may know from our Facebook interactions, I do lean towards the conservative side of the fence. Though having said that, I have some close friends who are ardent, strident leftists. So for me, I would consider woke a pejorative.
Okay. I mean, it's certainly used as a pejorative.
Yeah, and I think in most senses. However, having said that, I also realize that if you look at history is full of ebbs and flows and changes and shifts in attitude. Like, let's say we were in the 1850s in the South, and we said, hey, those black guys, we shouldn't keep black guys or black people as slaves. I would have no doubt that someone with that attitude would be called woke.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Whereas, there's this battle between, wanting to progress things but not letting it get too far ahead, I suppose, is, one of the, like culture is like history and civilization is full of these battles between people who want to keep things the same and people who want to change things.
Right. So I'm curious, Damien. Let me ask you this, since you've already identified as someone who has somewhat right-leaning views. Let me ask you,
Yeah, yeah.
how do you, because you consider woke a pejorative, how would you define
Mhm.
it?
Yep.
How would you define what do you think
Uh,
woke means to make it kind of a pejorative?
uh, I think probably the most neutral definition I could give is putting feelings over facts and expecting people to, I suppose, uh, acknowledge those feelings as the standard of reality is probably the best definition I could give.
Okay, so feelings
That
over
that does,
facts.
Perfect.
yeah,
Do you have
Okay,
like an example of that?
yeah. I'd say sorry.
Do you have an example of that?
Look, I think probably transgenderism is probably the classic example in that, like I personally, my personal views on transgenderism is that there are people whose neurology doesn't line up with their biology, and
okay.
history is full of examples of people who are gender non-conforming.
Hmm.
But I'm
Okay.
also of the opinion that if you put on a dress and lipstick, that doesn't, or if you put on a pair of pants, that doesn't necessarily make you a person of the opposite gender. I
Okay.
think there's more to gender than just how you feel. I think there's a bit more to it.
What would you add to it beyond how someone feels and identifies?
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's I think there's, to me, gender is a preponderance of characteristics.
Okay.
It
Such
is
Hmm.
as
probably the best. Sorry.
I'm sorry, we lost you a little bit in there.
that it's a
Mhm, mhm.
Uh, so,
yeah, you said that it was a bunch of characteristics. So what are some of them?
yeah, I would say a preponderance of characteristics. Like if you try to define gender by one particular characteristic, then I think
Hmm.
you're going to have to either exclude or include and lose a whole lot of meaning. Like for example, if we define anything with four legs as a dog, then that means cats are now dogs. That means guinea pigs are now dogs.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
Okay.
But
or if you say, I think there's the old example from ancient Greece
mhm.
where I forget who it was, but someone tried to define a human as anything with two legs and without hair, and I think it was Asclepius, if I'm not mistaken. Someone came in with a chicken that was plucked and said, "Behold, this is a human."
Mhm. So what is gen what how
So
did would you define how would you define gender? You said it
Gender.
was a preponderance of characteristics, but that's not really a
yeah,
useful
I would
definition
say
on
that
its own, right?
that is something. Yeah, it's something I don't have an immediate answer for, but I think gender is inherently tied to biology and neurology.
Okay.
Mm,
So I
Do
think there are certain. So actually, I suppose biology is more to do with sex, whereas gender is more to do with neurology. But I think there are certain markers of uh, of gender that we can observe, and yeah,
can you
like
give an
for
example?
example, there's a like for example, there's a reason why women are safer drivers than men.
what? Okay.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah. If you look at insurance premiums, particularly
mhm.
in my country, yeah, like women get cheaper insurance premiums because women are generally safer drivers.
Do you know that here in Mexico we are considered not safe drivers? Like
Yeah,
in here, the
it probably
insurance is
varies.
expensive for us in here.
Yeah, okay, that
But
is interesting. Well, and there's a
let's go with
reason,
that.
reason
Let's
why.
go with
Sorry?
hold on, Damien. Let's go with the Australian model, for example. Let's just take that
Yeah.
at face value
Yeah,
and assume it to be true for the moment. Women in Australia, generally speaking, are safer drivers. What does that tell us about gender?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it just says one thing. Probably, well, it's a bit of a hard one. I would say that women in general can be seen to be less risk taking, for example, and less likely to engage in criminal activity.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't met my
Probably
cousins.
one factor.
Well, okay, I'm fine with all of this so far. Let's just go with it. I've never been in a car accident before.
I'm not trying to offend anyone.
No,
No.
We're not.
You're fine.
We're not.
You're
No.
fine. I just want to look at it. I want to examine I want to get to what you think gender is and to see if we're getting closer to a definition. You just said that in Australia, women are generally perceived to be as safer drivers, and they have lower insurance premiums, and they're not as much risk takers. And I'm looking back.
Personality, like less women are arrested, incarcerated,
Right.
things like that as well. So there's
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, Damien, here's the thing. I've never been arrested before. I've never been incarcerated. I've never had a car accident while I was driving. I'm generally not a risk taker. So, by your definition, am I a woman?
that would make you a woman. No, because I think there's more to it. And as I said
Okay.
earlier, I don't have a simple one line a one liner that I can give while I'm having a break from work.
Fair enough.
And this is a question that I ask myself constantly as well. Is like you can say like the ultimate question is like what is a woman? But you could also turn that question back on yourself and ask what is a man?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't have an answer for either, a quick answer for either of those.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Go ahead, Alma.
okay,
But
in our case,
I think it's something a bit more complicated. But I'm also just personally of the opinion that how can I say, saying you are a woman doesn't necessarily make you a woman. Well, just like saying you are a man doesn't necessarily make you a man.
But you would agree that it doesn't necessarily make you not just because it doesn't match your biological sex, right?
But I think to me, gender is more a reflection of who you are or what you are, rather than a feeling of identity.
I think that's saying the same thing in a different way.
yeah.
I almost feel like that's the same thing.
Well,
it's a
that could
reflection of
be-
who you are.
There could be, I'll be saying the same thing in a different way. It's just that,
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
a quick
so go ahead,
Yeah.
Alma.
example. And you are seeing both of us on the screen, correct?
Well, he's
You
saying
can see
me.
us.
I
You
don't
can
have any
see Bryce, and you can see me. My avatar.
no, I can't. No, I'm not. I'm not looking at the computer at the moment.
Oh, you're not looking at. Well, before calling, did you saw the screen? So what
briefly, yeah.
what gender would you identify each of us?
I would say Bryce is male, and I would say Alma, if I had to guess, I would say female.
So you just used expressions that denote sex, and I would have probably used that as well. I'm definitely male, but do you think that sex and gender are the same, or is there a difference?
No, I don't. I don't think they're the same, but I think there is a very strong correlation.
Okay. So with respect to Alma's question, when we're talking about gender, and usually the gender pronouns are man, woman, that sort of thing, you would say that you would think that I am the man and that Alma is a woman?
yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Alma.
And how did you get to that conclusion?
Sorry?
How did you end up with that conclusion? You don't really know us, like we're in the internet.
Yeah, it's
Well, to be fair, he does know me, and I think I've revealed
Okay.
my
Yeah.
gender. So Damien and I
Yeah,
know each other.
yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as
So-
Alma
But-
goes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas Alma, I would say Alma is a very feminine name.
Okay. So if a transgender person changed their name to another one?
Yeah, yeah. But I suppose it doesn't change. Changing your name doesn't change your gender.
Maybe
probably-
we could simplify it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could simplify it, Damien. Instead of talking about what doesn't change your gender, what do you think does change your gender? Like, what would a person have to do to actually
Be considered of a
Yeah.
gender.
be considered a woman as far as you're
Yeah,
concerned?
I would say probably genitalia is probably one of the biggest markers of
Okay.
gender change.
Okay. Do you know anything about Alma's genitalia?
and
Just checking.
Do you
Do
know,
you know-
anything?
Do you know anything about Alma's genitalia?
no, I don't.
Okay, carry on. So genitalia is one of the most important.
I don't know anything about yours, but I think that from my lived experience interacting with numerous people,
Mhm.
there are certain cues that give us enough clues as to put people, as to what sex/gender they line up as.
Would it be fair
And
to
if
say?
I'm wrong, then I'm wrong.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be fair to say that a person who is making an honest effort to present as a gender that would be recognized in their society as feminine is someone you should identify as a woman?
Look, I think that there's two things about it. Like I said, I personally know people who have transition genders, and I have no problem at all calling them by their preferred pronouns and recognizing their gender. For me, it is about respect and helping people live their best life.
Okay. So
Okay.
you would agree then that
No issue there at all. But I suppose where I draw the line is that how can I put it? This is actually an interesting conversation. I suppose where I would draw the line is people who people who hold a grudge and make their the fact that they've transitioned their whole identity and who are looking for a fight because you may have slipped up.
Mhm. So you are
Where I tend to
Yeah. So I actually think that that's something different. I think that people look, we are all human beings. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, right? And sometimes, I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. Sometimes I have accidentally misgendered people or dead named people who have transitioned without realizing it, and then was told after the fact, hey, and so I correct myself, and then the correction is done. I don't think that that's really problematic.
You raised a good point. Dead naming, like what is dead naming?
Pardon?
What would you consider to be dead naming?
I would consider dead naming when Jordan Peterson refers to Elliot Page as Ellen Page, even though he clearly calls himself Elliot Page.
Okay. All right. The question is, what is Elliot/Ellen Page's legal name?
As far as I know, it's Elliot Page.
Elliot.
Okay. So if it is Okay, but if it was Ellen, would
And
your
by the
intention
way,
be wrong?
let me
Calling-
say before you get, hold on, Damien. I actually don't care what somebody's legal name is. I only care about the name that they want to be
They
identified
want
with.
to be identified.
Because as far as I know, Whoopi Goldberg's legal name is not Whoopi Goldberg either. But everyone
Yeah.
calls her.
Correct. And
There
this
is a lot of artists that they don't use like their real legal name. They use the name that they like.
Yeah.
Like Marilyn Monroe's name is not Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having said that, like Whoopi Goldberg, has she officially changed her name to Whoopi Goldberg?
I don't know, but I know that she was not born Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know as well. She wasn't born Whoopi Goldberg. I suppose there's a difference between like a performer who is in the public eye and
So somebody like Elliot Page then.
Yeah. And I suppose, does the fact that they changed their name, does that not let's say that Whoopi Goldberg legally changed her name to Whoopi Goldberg? Is it offensive to? And let's say you knew her by her birth name.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be offensive to call Whoopi Goldberg by her birth name when you've always known her by her birth name?
To her, it probably would be.
Yep. If she doesn't like that name, or if she changed it for a reason, for a specific reason, and she doesn't like to be called that, calling her that is offensive.
I know someone personally who changed their legal name. It's somebody I served with in the military, and the reason I know that they changed their legal name is because we wear name tapes on our uniforms. And I noticed one day he came in with a completely different name, so I'm like, "What the heck?" And I asked him about it. No, I didn't ask him about it. Some time went by, and then I saw him outside of work one day, and I called him by his old name, and he tapped me on my shoulder and said, "Hey, I go by this now. I appreciate it if you wouldn't call me that anymore." And so clearly he was, and this is not someone who's changed gender or anything. This is someone who's changed gender. They just happened to change their name. So I would suspect that someone who had changed their name, like if Whoopi Goldberg or Elliot Page, anyone who officially changes their name or who calls themselves something or says they want to be identified by a certain name, I would expect them to be offended if you just refuse to call them that.
Yeah, it's like a secularity says, like, if we start to call you Donald just because it's easier for me to say Donald than Damien, say, you know what? I'm just going to call you Donald. I don't care what you say. That will be.
Or even if you had changed your name, Damien, like you might be Damien today, but you might want to change your name to Matthew next week.
At one point,
yeah.
Should we still call you Damien, or should we call you what you want to be called, right?
Yeah, but I suppose the big thing is why you've changed your name as well, and it's I think it's a multi-factored thing, and like on a personal level, if I think there's a difference between like using someone's dead name on a personal level, but then when you're a public figure, do the rules suddenly how can I say? Are there a different set of rules for celebrities than there are for private people?
I'm not sure that there is. I'm not sure that there actually is. Like, I actually don't know why that matters at all. If it really is about respecting other people, then it shouldn't matter why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
I had a similar experience as Bryce. Like, I have a friend that her name used to be Pancracia. So that's even in Mexico, that name is kind of like everybody kind of laugh when they hear it.
Okay.
And she was really upset. She was given that name because I think her grandmother had it, and she changed it. She didn't change her gender; she just changed the name. So nobody knew after that Lucia was named Pancracia. Both names are fake. So and not saying anything. So, but if I go up there and she's with friends and everything, and I call her, "Hey, Pancracia, how you been?" It's kind of like a dick move, you know. This kind of being disrespectful, and kind of like, "Oh, your name used to be Pancracia," and everybody will start laughing at her again, and you know.
Okay.
So let me ask you this,
Actually,
Damien. Do you think?
Well, you know, I'll give you. Bryce, give me a second. In my situation, my wife is Southeast Asian, and I, you know, every so often I'll go to the Southeast Asian country of her birth. And what I've noticed is that Damien doesn't translate well in most of the Southeast Asian languages spoke in this particular Southeast Asian country. So should I be offended? Should I be offended that these people? So my name will literally change, or I have to go by another name when I go to Southeast Asia, because no one there can say my name easily or properly. So it's just easier for them to call me by another name.
There is the
should I
thing.
be offended?
There is the thing. Is you the one that is deciding to accept if they are going to use that name or not? You are the one saying, you know what? Okay, I see that it's difficult for you to say Damien, and you want to call me Jay. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But you are the one saying that. It's not like they're imposing that on you, and you have to just deal with it.
Yeah. So then, do I have the right to say that they're trying to erase my identity and my culture because they can't say my name properly, and so they go by a different name? Is that something I could say to them? And then
You have the right.
You know,
You have the right to say whatever you want, Damien. I think the question, really, the relevant question is it reasonable of you to say that in that particular circumstance? And I would say in that example, probably not. It's probably not a reasonable thing to do, given the fact that you're talking about people who in their native language have difficulty actually saying your name. So there's practical reasons for them.
But then that happens in white countries as well. You know, people in white countries have problems saying African names.
Sure, but
you know,
I think what we're talking about
now, African name.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's really equivalent to a discussion about gender, because that's not the case when people change.
The whole thing started off as a discussion about wokeism, and you know, we just use gender as an example. So I'm happy to move off of gender because
I don't want to move on to because we're going to close out here. We only have a little bit more time, so I think that we should probably conclude with that point since you brought that one up. But I would say with respect to gender, we know that since all of us both said Elliot just a few minutes ago, and all of us also both said Ellen, those are both fairly easy words to say in our language, right? So it doesn't really require any effort on our part. So the question is, who's being unreasonable? Is it the person who prefers to be called by a different name that everyone can say? Or is it the people who are resisting calling them that name because they would rather call them by their old name? Which one do you think is reasonable?
Yeah.
Well, look, I think if it costs you nothing to show kindness, then show kindness.
I agree.
I agree with that. Yep.
Yeah. So would you say that that's an example? Would you say that that's an example of being woke?
Possibly, yes. Possibly.
Okay.
Like, I suppose if you the reason is why you've changed your name. Like, if you've changed your name because you're trying to avoid domestic violence, and someone calls you, like, let's say, then you see a friend from 20 years ago, and they accidentally call you by your former name. That's a bit of yeah. But then
what if the reason, Damien? Hold on. What if the reason they wanted to change their name is because they identify as a different gender? What if that's the reason? Should you call them by the new name, or should you not call them by
Oh,
their
look,
name.
as I said, for me, you know, if it costs you nothing to be kind, call them by the name they want to be called.
Okay, so we don't even need
So-
to go to another example because that's the example
Yeah.
that touches on gender, right? So if we all agree that
And
call
look,
people,
one of my best friends who is transgender has changed her name, and I have not ever asked her what her birth name was, because I respect that person. I'm not going to go into that. I know this person by this name, and they are my friend, and I'm not going to delve into their past. If they want to tell me what their birth name was, okay, I'll respect that.
okay. So are you being woke?
I think. Sorry.
Are
so
you being
you are
woke?
being woke.
Very good question. I think
I know. That's why I asked.
possibly, quite
Possibly. Okay. So
Like
is that?
by my biggest definition,
ahead, sorry.
it's possible. But is being woke a bad thing?
I don't think it is. And you said if it costs you nothing, show kindness. So if that's an example of being
Of
woke,
being woke.
I don't know why we would use it as a pejorative.
Yeah.
You know, you talked a little while ago.
Yeah. However, woke also then incorporates things like racial, I suppose, seeing people as like putting people into boxes by their race as well. That's another aspect of wokeism.
Can you give us an example? What do you mean by that? If wokeism encompasses
As
putting
in, like
people
if
into
you're-
different
if
categories
you're-
based on race.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, well, like if you're African American, you're expected to agree with all the African Americans about certain points of, like for example, reparations and all that. Like if you're an African American and you vote Republican, or you're a conservative, I'm sure there's a few pejoratives that you would be called because he doesn't act black, he acts white.
Well, okay, so you're conflating a bunch of different things together.
Yes.
So let me address them one at a time, going in reverse. When you talk about someone acting white or acting black, I don't know that that's a thing. I think that that's just stereotypes that people have, right?
Well,
I've been
enough-
accused. Hold on, Damien. Let me finish because I want to. After I finish responding, then you can talk. I have been accused of acting white before in the past. I've also been accused of acting black. It depended on the perception of the individual. So I'm very confused by this because I'm just acting like me. I don't really know that I think people have certain stereotypes about how black people are supposed to behave or speak or dress or whatever, and that's just the stereotypes that are out there. But that's not really acting black. That's just stereotype. When it comes to the expectation that people in the community have as far as political ideology and political affiliation, that's different because usually what people are criticizing, for example, we have African American conservatives in our government. We always have. The thing that most people in the African American community criticize with that is that conservative politics generally do not benefit the African American community. And I think that that's why people tend to question that. Or similar when you have gay people. There's
The
gay
minorities,
Republicans.
any minority, there is Latino representatives that are like saying like, yes, build the wall. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Michael Rubio or Ted Cruz or the 1,000. Yeah.
Oops. So, and I just wanted to highlight this real quick. Did Erykah Badu coin the term woke? Yeah, actually did. According to my research, now remember that is Google research, so take it with a grain of salt. But I don't recall anyone using it before her. But yeah, I generally think that there are. I don't think it's woke for somebody to say, hey, that person is African American or Latino or gay and they're Republican. That seems weird because the policies they're advocating for don't seem to benefit their demographic. They seem to be working against their own interests. I think those are legitimate questions, right?
yeah. But I'll say like for example, if you date outside your race,
Hmm.
there's there are like if you date outside your race, you are seen as fetishizing, about
Mm,
people of, that like I've seen that. Well, actually, I think I've been called that, once or twice. As I've been called pejorative because I'm white and my wife is Southeast Asian.
By who?
Like by people who I would say are ignorant.
Okay,
Like
but are
right.
you saying that, are you identifying them with woke people or people who are not woke?
Yeah.
both. Like there are people who, I would say are completely ignorant. Like we might call them right wing bigots, for want of a better term, who have criticized me as a person for dating outside my race.
Hmm.
And then I've had people call me, or people on the left, or who are, I'd say, identifiably left, who have accused me of racism because I married a Southeast Asian woman,
Yeah. I mean,
because
so really it doesn't have to do
I'm
with, yeah,
So
it's not really about being woke or not woke, because you've gotten it from people who consider themselves either or, right?
yes, indeed,
Yeah.
but I would say that people who are woke can show a level of ignorance or disrespect that people who aren't woke also show as well.
Sure.
it's not related to being woke then.
Yeah. It's
Sorry?
not specific to be, it's
Yeah,
not
it's not
specific to being
specific.
woke.
Definitely no. I just think the flavor of the month at the moment is
Hmm.
is wokeness.
But is it a
But
bad
like
flavor?
Yeah.
like I would say we will always have disrespect and bigotry and hatred and racism and all those kind of negative human qualities. Like white supremacy is a form of those qualities, and I would say wokeism is also another instance of those qualities as well.
Mm, not
I don't know.
really.
I don't know that. Yeah, I mean, look, we can talk about that. We don't have time to delve into this deeper, but maybe it's something that we need to have another discussion on, because there's no shortage of opinions. I think that
Hmm.
you certainly, you gave an interesting point of view, Damien. I wanted to, the one thing that I was trying to get back to is your definition of
Yep.
woke, where you said it was more about feelings than facts, or something, words to that effect. Was that about how you defined
Something
it?
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and but I mean, I don't know that you have presented an evidence to show that. And I mean, it seems to me that most of the people who criticize wokeness are usually making emotional arguments. And I see very little logical consistency from people who are anti woke in their arguments. Now, that doesn't
I
mean that there are
definitely agree with
no
you.
logical arguments, but I feel like the facts versus feelings, I mean, what are the facts? If we only want to talk about facts, then let's just make it a fact-based discussion. You know what I mean? And I think
Hmm.
that when we do that, and I start asking questions like, what is gender? What is sex? And you've admitted that you didn't
Yeah.
really, they were difficult things to define, right?
Oh, yeah. And that's something I will say all day long is that these kind of things are simple to define. But I was going to say one more thing about my definition is that feelings over facts to the point that it reduces the standard of offence is
But
probably
then,
the is probably the bigger thing.
but then you are also talking about feelings because whoever gets offended, those are like their
Mhm.
personal feelings, and that doesn't have to do anything with being woke.
But that's
Because
how.
the
But
definition that
that's
we
how
have
I.
given to you is that we are going against issues because of the fact that those issues are harming people, not because that, oh, we feel bad about it. No. It's
Damien,
Oh yeah,
we
I agree that.
Yeah, Damien, we would love to go on, but we have pretty much hit the end of the show, Mark. So we're going to invite you to call back. We will do a follow-up on this, no doubt, because obviously there's a lot more to talk
unpack,
about.
yeah.
But we are going to have to end the show. But I appreciate you calling in.
And I appreciate you having me, both of you.
All right,
Thank you.
take care, bud.
Thank you for calling. Bye bye.
See you guys, bye.
So that was an interesting perspective. I think that Damien had kind of a general idea of what he wanted to talk about, but when I started getting into specifics, it was difficult for him to say what the more conservative position would be, on wokeness. If it's anti-woke, if wokeness is bad or it should be used as a pejorative, I don't think he really said why it's prejudicial or why it's a bad word, and it seemed like it almost sounded like he was making a feelings argument.
Yeah, I felt the same. I felt that at the beginning it was like, oh, it's just because people get offended by somebody called them by the wrong name or something like that. But then at the end, he accepted that everybody does that. Everybody, whatever their reasons for changing name, it should be respected. So I don't think he also has very defined what he was meaning by...
I think he's conflicted, and I think he kind of admitted that. He said that he had one foot on the left and one foot on the right, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes you're conflicted with your views. So hopefully we get a chance to talk to him in the future. But we got to wrap this up. And I would, first of all, Alma, thanks for doing the show with me. Thanks for stepping in.
Thank you.
We had a last minute withdrawal. Yeah, Cynthia couldn't make it, but it was a great conversation. I appreciate everyone who participated, everyone in the chat, everyone who called in, and we'd like to invite you guys to call in the future. Sunday, let's talk at 984-789-4787. Sometimes I'll be here. Alma might show up in the future. Maybe we'll get Cynthia back, but we're going to have more great conversations like this in the future. So from all of us here at Skeptic Haven, this is Brycearonee, and for Alma, we'll see you guys the next time.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.